At 2 in the morning, I was under the hood of my pickup truck in the garage, cursing at a stubborn alternator belt, when I heard Lauren's voice drifting through the heating vent above my head. She was talking to someone upstairs, her tone soft and intimate in a way that made my wrench slip and scrape my knuckles raw. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. "We have to be more careful," she whispered. "Jonas is getting suspicious." Jonas. That's me. And yeah, I was getting suspicious, but not about what you might think. See, Lauren had been married to me for exactly 18 months, and in that time, she'd developed this weird habit of spending 20 minutes in my son Eli's room every night before bed. Said she was checking on him, or making sure he had everything he needed for school tomorrow. Eli's 19, he's a college freshman. The kid can wipe his own nose. I'm not an idiot, just married like one. The voice that answered her made my blood turn to ice water. It was Eli's voice, low and guilty. "Maybe we should tell him," Eli said. "Tell him what? That his new wife and his son have been—" I couldn't hear the rest. The heating system kicked on, drowning out their words with a mechanical roar that sounded like my world falling apart. "My name is Jonas Miller. I'm 48 years old, I own a struggling auto repair shop on the east side of Millbrook, and up until that moment, I thought I had a pretty good handle on my life. I'd married Lauren Blackwood after a whirlwind courtship that started when she brought her BMW in for a brake job. She was this sharp, ambitious lawyer who worked at Preston & Associates downtown, all designer suits and confident smiles. Way out of my league, but somehow she'd fallen for my blue-collar charm. Or so I thought. Now I was standing in my garage at 2 a.m., listening to my wife whisper secrets to my son through a heating vent and feeling like the world's biggest fool. I cleaned up my tools with shaking hands, my mind racing. What the hell was going on up there? Lauren had always been good to Eli. Maybe too good. She'd insisted on paying for his college tuition when his mother couldn't afford it. She'd bought him a car for his birthday. She'd even helped him move into his dorm room last fall, though he came home most weekends. But this felt different. Wrong. I crept upstairs, avoiding the squeaky third step, and pressed my ear to Eli's bedroom door. Silence. I checked our bedroom. Lauren was already in bed, pretending to sleep, her breathing too controlled to be natural. The next morning, Lauren acted like nothing had happened. She made coffee, kissed my cheek, and headed off to work in her silver BMW like she did every day. But she left her phone on the kitchen counter. Lauren never forgot her phone. Ever. I stared at it for a full minute, knowing I was about to cross a line I couldn't uncross. Then I picked it up. No password. That was the first red flag. Lauren was paranoid about her phone security, always had been. Said it was because of client confidentiality. But this morning, it opened right up to her message screen. The most recent conversation was with someone named E, and it made my stomach drop through the floor. "Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you." "When is Jay going to his boxing gym again?" "Tomorrow night. We'll have the house to ourselves." "I love you, Lauren. This is killing me." "I love you too, baby. Just a little longer and we can figure this out." I set the phone down with hands that felt like they belonged to someone else. Eli. My son Eli was having an affair with my wife. The coffee mug in my hand shattered against the kitchen wall before I realized I'd thrown it. That afternoon, I drove to Murphy's Electronics on 5th Street and bought the smallest, highest-definition camera they had. Cost me $400 I couldn't afford, but I had to know the truth. The whole truth. "This for security?" Murphy asked as he rang me up. "Something like that," I said. That night, while Lauren was at her book club and Eli was at his part-time job at the campus bookstore, I installed the camera in Eli's room, tucked it behind some books on his shelf, aimed at his bed. The battery would last 48 hours, and it would record everything. I felt sick doing it. This was my son's room, my wife we were talking about. But I had to know. Lauren came home from book club around 10, chattering about some novel they'd discussed, acting perfectly normal. We watched the late news together, her head on my shoulder, like always. When she got up to use the bathroom, she said, "I think I'll check on Eli before bed. Make sure he's not staying up too late studying." "He's 19, Lauren. He can manage his own bedtime." She laughed, that tinkling sound that used to make my heart skip. "You know me, I'm a worrier." Yeah, I was starting to know her real well. She was gone for 23 minutes. I counted every one of them. The next morning, I waited until they were both gone before reviewing the footage on my laptop. What I saw there burned itself into my brain like a brand. My wife and my son, together in his bed. Her whispering, "He'll never know, baby. He's too trusting, too simple. Him saying, "I feel terrible about this. He's my dad." Her laughing softly. "He's not your real dad, Eli. And he won't be my husband much longer if I have anything to say about it." I watched my son who I'd raised since he was 12 when his mother died, betray me in the worst possible way. I watched my wife of 18 months plan my destruction while she destroyed my family. The laptop screen went dark, and I saw my reflection staring back at me. My face looked older, harder. The kind of face that belonged to a man who'd been pushed too far. I'd been an amateur boxer in my 20s, before I got married the first time and settled down. Never went pro, but I was good enough to know how to take a punch and how to throw one. More importantly, I'd learned that the best fighters don't swing wild when they're angry. They wait, they plan, they make their opponent beg for the bell. Time to get back in the ring. The walls in my house had always been thin, but now they felt like tissue paper. Every sound Lauren and Eli made seemed amplified, every shared glance loaded with meaning I couldn't ignore. I moved through my own home like a ghost, watching my wife and son pretend to be normal while they planned my destruction. 3 days after watching that footage, I was at Marty's boxing gym on Riverside Drive, working out my rage on a heavy bag that had seen better decades. Marty Kowalski had been my trainer back in the day, and now he ran this place for kids from the neighborhood who needed somewhere to channel their anger that wasn't the streets. "You're hitting like you want to kill something," Marty said, watching me throw combinations that would have dropped a horse. He was 60 now, gray-haired and thick around the middle, but his eyes were still sharp. "What's eating you, Jonas?" I stopped punching and leaned against the bag, sweat dripping onto the cracked concrete floor. The gym smelled like old leather and honest sweat, nothing like the perfume and lies atmosphere of my house. "My wife's cheating on me," I said. "Ah, hell, I'm sorry, man. You want to talk about it?" "With my son." Marty's face went through several expressions before settling on disgusted. "Jesus Christ, Jonas. You sure?" "I got it on video." He was quiet for a long moment, then picked up a pair of focus mitts. "You want payback?" "Yeah." "Then listen to me real careful. Don't swing wild. Don't do nothing stupid that'll land you in jail or make you look like the bad guy. You want to hurt them? Make them beg for the bell. Make them wish they'd never stepped in the ring with you." I spent 2 hours working combinations with Marty, and by the time I left, I had the beginnings of a plan. The Millbrook Elementary School spring fundraiser was that Saturday night. Lauren had been looking forward to it for weeks, said it was important for her image at the law firm to be seen supporting community causes. She'd bought a new dress, made dinner reservations for afterward. The whole thing was supposed to be our perfect night out as a couple. It was going to be perfect, all right, just not the way she expected. The event was held in the school gymnasium, decorated with streamers and balloons, filled with Millbrook's finest citizens pretending they cared about underprivileged kids while they sipped wine and gossiped. Lauren worked the room like the politician she'd always wanted to be, her hand on my arm, introducing me as my husband Jonas to people who clearly wondered what she was doing with a grease monkey. I played my part, smiled when I was supposed to smile, laughed at the right jokes, let her show me off like a trained dog. But when they called for speeches from major donors, I surprised everyone by standing up. "I'd like to say something," I announced, my voice carrying across the gymnasium. Lauren's face went pale. "Jonas, what are you doing?" "Just want to toast my beautiful wife," I said, raising my plastic cup of wine, "and talk about family values." The room quieted down, sensing drama the way people always do. I walked to the microphone they'd set up for the auction, Lauren's hand trying to grab my arm as I passed. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice echoing off the gym walls, "I want to talk to you tonight about trust, about family, about the people we invite into our homes and our hearts." Lauren was standing near the back now, her face white as paper. I could see some of her coworkers from Preston and Associates, including that smug partner, Richard Preston himself. "See, I used to think I knew what family meant," I continued. "I thought it meant loyalty, honesty, taking care of each other." I paused, looking directly at Lauren. "But I've learned recently that some people have a very different definition of taking care of family." The crowd was getting uncomfortable now. People were shifting in their seats, whispering to each other. Lauren was shaking her head frantically, but I wasn't done. "Some people think family means taking whatever you want, whenever you want it. Some people think trust is just another word for stupid." My voice was getting harder, colder. "Some people think that as long as you're careful, as long as you're quiet about it, you can betray the people who love you most and get away with it." "Jonas, please," Lauren called out, her voice cracking. "To family values," I said, raising my cup again, "and to the people who truly understand what they mean." I drained the wine and walked out of the gymnasium, leaving behind a room full of confused whispers and one very terrified wife. The next morning, Lauren tried to pretend nothing had happened, but I could see the fear in her eyes. She made breakfast with shaking hands, spilling coffee, and burning the toast. "What was that about last night?" she finally asked. "What was what about?" "Your speech. You embarrassed me in front of my colleagues." I looked up from my eggs, letting her see something new in my face, something cold and calculating that hadn't been there before. "Did I? I was just talking about family values. Thought you'd appreciate that." She left for work without kissing me goodbye. That afternoon, I made a few phone calls. First to my bank, moving our joint savings into an account with only my name on it. Then to Lauren's boss. "Mr. Preston, this is Jonas Miller, Lauren's husband. I was wondering if we could have a private conversation about my wife's mentoring techniques with younger colleagues." The conversation that followed was brief but productive. I didn't make any direct accusations, just asked some very pointed questions about the firm's policies regarding relationships between senior and junior staff members, about what might happen if someone were to provide evidence of inappropriate conduct. Preston was smart enough to read between the lines. By the time Lauren got home that evening, she'd been called into a meeting with the partners and placed on administrative leave pending an investigation into potential ethical violations. She stormed into the house like a hurricane, her perfect composure finally cracking. "What did you do?" she screamed at me. "What did you tell them?" "I told them the truth," I said calmly. Or at least, I asked them what they'd do if the truth came to light. "You bastard! You're trying to ruin my career." "I'm not trying to do anything, Lauren. I'm doing it." That's when Eli walked through the front door, home from classes. He took one look at Lauren's tear-streaked face and my cold smile and knew the game was up. "Dad, I can explain. Can you?" I walked to the kitchen counter where I'd left my laptop, already queued up to the footage from his room. "Because I'd love to hear your explanation for this." I hit play. The sound of Lauren's voice filled the kitchen. "He'll never know, baby. He's too trusting, too simple." Eli's face went green. Lauren lunged for the laptop, but I caught her wrist. We're going to watch the whole thing, all of us, like a family." "Jonas, please," Lauren whispered. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly. You thought I was just the dumb old man who'd pay your bills and keep his mouth shut while you screwed my son behind my back." I released her wrist and stepped back, letting them both see what I'd become. "You thought I was the kind of man who'd take this lying down." Eli was crying now, ugly sobs that shook his whole body. "Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It just happened, and then it kept happening, and I didn't know how to stop." "It just happened?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You just happened to fall into bed with my wife? Multiple times? You just happened to plan around my schedule so you could betray me more efficiently?" "Jonas," Lauren tried again, her lawyer instincts kicking in. "This is all a misunderstanding. We can work through this." "The only thing we're going to work through," I said, "is how much this is going to cost you. Both of you." I closed the laptop and looked at them, my cheating wife and my backstabbing son, and felt something cold and final settle in my chest. "You wanted a villain? Congratulations. You just created one." The next few days passed in a strange, cold silence. Lauren moved into the guest bedroom, claiming she needed space to think. Eli avoided me completely, coming home only to sleep and leaving before I got up in the morning. They thought they were giving me the silent treatment, but really they were just giving me time to plan. I'd always been good with my hands, good at fixing things that were broken. But some things can't be fixed. Some things need to be torn down completely before you can build something new. Friday night, I was at Murphy's Tavern on Oak Street, nursing a beer and listening to the locals complain about their lives. Murphy's was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business, where gossip spread faster than wildfire and lasted twice as long. Perfect for what I had in mind. I was on my second beer when Trent Ashford walked in. Trent was 27, pretty boy handsome, and rich enough to think the world owed him whatever he wanted. He worked as a junior partner at Preston & Associates, which is how he'd met Lauren. What I didn't know until I did some digging was that he'd been sniffing around my wife for months, even before the thing with Eli started. Turned out my wife was busier than I'd thought. "Jonas Miller," Trent said, sliding onto the bar stool next to me like we were old friends. "Heard you were having some domestic troubles." "Word travels fast," I said, not looking at him. "Small town. People talk." He ordered a craft beer that cost more than my lunch. "Look, I know this is awkward, but I wanted to clear the air between us." "Clear the air?" "About Lauren. I know you probably heard rumors, but I want you to know that nothing inappropriate happened between us. We're just colleagues, friends. I turned to look at him then, really look at him. He had the kind of face that had never been hit, the kind of confidence that came from never having to face real consequences for his actions. That's funny, I said, because I have photos of you two together at the Riverside Motel last Tuesday afternoon. I didn't, but he didn't know that. His face went white, then red, then white again. I don't know what you think you saw. I saw enough. I finished my beer and stood up. Here's what's going to happen, Trent. You're going to stay away from my wife. You're going to transfer to another law firm, and you're going to keep your mouth shut about everything you know. Or what? I leaned in close, letting him smell the beer on my breath, letting him see the calluses on my hands and the scars on my knuckles from 20 years of working on cars and 10 years of boxing. Or I'm going to make you wish you'd never heard the name Miller. I left him sitting there, probably calling Lauren before I even made it to my truck, but I wasn't done with Trent Ashford, not by a long shot. Saturday morning, I drove to the parking garage where Trent kept his precious Porsche. It was a beautiful car, silver and sleek, probably worth more than I made in 2 years. He'd parked it in a corner spot, away from the other cars, like he was afraid someone might breathe on it wrong. I popped the hood and got to work. Sugar in the gas tank is a myth. It doesn't actually damage the engine. But loosening a few key bolts, disconnecting some important wires, and introducing a little sand into the oil system, that'll do the job just fine. I also had a can of spray paint in my truck, bright red. By the time I was done, Homewrecker was spelled out across his windshield in letters 3 feet tall. The security cameras in that garage had been broken for months. Amazing how long it takes the city to fix things when there's no budget for it. Monday morning, Lauren got a call from work. The partners had finished their investigation and decided that her ethical violations warranted immediate termination. No severance package, no references, just a cardboard box for her personal items and an escort to the door. She came home in tears, mascara running down her cheeks, looking like the world had ended. They fired me, she sobbed. 20 years of building my career, and they threw it all away based on rumors and speculation. Rumors? I was sitting in my chair, reading the newspaper like it was any other day. Is that what we're calling video evidence now? You bastard! You destroyed my life. I didn't destroy anything, Lauren. I just stopped protecting you from the consequences of your choices. That afternoon, I got a call from Vera Hutchins, Lauren's best friend and the woman who'd introduced us in the first place. Vera worked as an accountant at a big firm downtown, lived in a fancy condo, drove a BMW that matched Lauren's. They'd been friends since college, thick as thieves. Jonas, we need to talk, Vera said. About Lauren, about this whole situation. What about it? Meet me at Riverside Park in an hour. There are things you need to know. I almost didn't go, but something in Vera's voice made me curious, and I'd learned that curiosity was a dangerous thing to ignore. Riverside Park was mostly empty on a Monday afternoon, just a few joggers and dog walkers. Vera was sitting on a bench overlooking the water, smoking a cigarette with shaking hands. I need to tell you something, she said without preamble. About Lauren, about all of this. I'm listening. It was my idea. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? The affair with Eli. I pushed her into it. Vera took a long drag of her cigarette, not meeting my eyes. I told her he was handsome, mature for his age. I told her she deserved someone who appreciated her, someone who wasn't so ordinary. Why? Because you ruined my life 12 years ago, and I've been waiting for a chance to return the favor. I stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. 12 years ago? I was working at Henderson & Associates. You remember? Your first wife's divorce lawyer. I was embezzling money from client accounts to pay for my mother's cancer treatments. You caught me skimming from Sarah's settlement and reported me to the state bar. Sarah, my first wife, Eli's mother. The divorce had been ugly and expensive, and I'd watched every penny because I couldn't afford not to. You were stealing from my wife. I was trying to save my mother's life, but you didn't care about that. You just cared about your precious money. I lost my job, my license, my reputation. I had to start over from nothing. So you decided to destroy my marriage in revenge? I decided to give you a taste of what it feels like to lose everything. She flicked her cigarette into the water. Lauren was so easy to manipulate. All I had to do was plant the right seeds, make the right suggestions. She did the rest herself. And Eli? That was just a bonus. I figured if I could turn your own son against you, it would hurt even more. I stood up slowly, my hands clenching into fists. You sick bitch! I'm not done, Vera said, finally looking at me. Trent was part of it too. I've been feeding him information about Lauren's schedule, her vulnerabilities. He's been playing the long game, waiting for the right moment to swoop in and comfort her when her marriage fell apart. The pieces were falling into place now, forming a picture so ugly I could barely look at it. You orchestrated all of this. Every bit of it. And the best part? Lauren doesn't even know. She thinks she fell in love naturally. She thinks her feelings are real. What about Eli? Oh, that was all her. Once I planted the idea that he was attractive, that he needed a mother figure, she ran with it. I just sat back and watched. I wanted to hit her. I wanted to wrap my hands around her throat and squeeze until she stopped talking. But Marty's words echoed in my head. Don't swing wild. Make them beg for the bell. Why are you telling me this? Because it's over now. Lauren's career is ruined. Your marriage is destroyed. Your relationship with your son is probably finished. I won. She stood up, smoothing down her skirt. I wanted you to know who really beat you. She started to walk away, but I called after her. Vera. She turned back, smiling with satisfaction. You made one mistake, I said. What's that? You told me the truth. Now I know exactly who I'm fighting. Her smile faltered. What do you mean? I mean, the game isn't over yet. In fact, it's just getting started. I left her standing there by the water, and for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I was smiling. That night, I sat in my garage with a beer and a notebook, planning my next moves like a general preparing for war. Vera thought she'd won, but she'd made a crucial error. She'd revealed herself as the puppet master, which meant I could cut her strings. I started with research. 12 years is a long time, but the internet has a good memory. It took me 3 hours and some creative searching, but I found what I was looking for. Records of Vera's disbarment, news articles about the embezzlement case, and most importantly, evidence that she'd never actually paid back all the money she'd stolen. Turned out Vera Hutchins had been living a lie for over a decade, building her new life on a foundation of unpaid debts and false credentials. Her current employer, Morrison Financial, probably had no idea they'd hired a disbarred lawyer with a history of financial fraud. But they were about to find out. Tuesday morning, I made some phone calls. First to Morrison Financial's Human Resources Department, then to the State Attorney General's office, then to 3 different reporters who specialized in white-collar crime. I didn't make any accusations, just asked some very pointed questions and suggested they might want to look into Ms. Hutchins's background. By Wednesday, Vera was front-page news in the business section. Local accountant linked to decade-old embezzlement scandal. The article was thorough, detailing her past crimes and raising questions about her current employment and financial status. She called me that afternoon, screaming, "You son of a bitch! You destroyed my life!" I didn't destroy anything, I said, echoing my words to Lauren. I just stopped protecting you from the consequences of your choices. This isn't over. Yes, it is. You're done, Vera. Finished. And if you so much as look at me or my family wrong, I'll make sure everyone in this town knows exactly what kind of person you really are. I hung up on her, but I wasn't done yet. Not even close. Thursday evening, I got a visit from Trent Ashford. He showed up at my house around 8, his pretty boy face twisted with anger, probably drunk on expensive whiskey and wounded pride. You think you're so smart, he said, pushing past me into my living room. Destroying people's lives, playing games. I'm not playing games, Trent. This is as serious as it gets. Lauren's a wreck because of you. She's talking about leaving town, starting over somewhere else. Good. Maybe she'll take you with her. You don't get it, do you? He was pacing now, agitated, dangerous. I love her. We love each other. What she had with your son was just a mistake, a moment of weakness. But what we have is real. What you have is built on lies and betrayal. It won't last. It'll last longer than your pathetic marriage did. That's when he made his mistake. He stepped too close, got in my face like he was going to do something about his anger, but I'd been waiting for him to make a move, hoping he'd give me an excuse. I hit him once, a straight right to the solar plexus that dropped him to his knees, gasping for air, not hard enough to cause permanent damage, but hard enough to make my point. Get out of my house, I said quietly, and don't come back. He staggered to his feet, holding his stomach, his face pale with shock and pain. You'll pay for this, he wheezed. No, Trent, you will. The next morning, I put the final phase of my plan into motion. I'd been thinking about this for days, planning every detail. I wanted all of them together, all of them exposed, all of them facing the consequences of their actions at the same time. I wanted justice, and I wanted it public. I sent identical text messages to Lauren, Eli, Vera, and Trent. Meet me at the old Riverside mansion at 8 p.m. tonight. Come alone. We need to settle this once and for all. The Riverside mansion was an abandoned estate on the outskirts of town, built by some railroad baron in the 1920s and left to rot after his family lost their fortune in the Depression. It was the perfect place for what I had in mind, isolated, dramatic, and equipped with the kind of acoustics that would carry voices for miles. I got there early, setting up my equipment. I'd borrowed a portable projector from Marty's gym, along with a generator and some speakers. I also brought my laptop, loaded with every piece of evidence I'd collected over the past 2 weeks. The hidden camera footage, photos of Trent and Lauren together, records of Vera's embezzlement, and a few other surprises I'd been saving for the right moment. They arrived within minutes of each other, like actors taking the stage for the final act of a play. Lauren came first, looking haggard and desperate. Then Eli, his face pale with guilt and fear. Vera showed up in her BMW, probably hoping she could still control the situation. Trent came last, his expensive suit wrinkled, his confidence finally cracking. "What is this?" Lauren demanded. "What do you want, Jonas?" "I want the truth," I said, standing in the mansion's grand foyer with my back to the massive staircase. "All of it. No more lies, no more manipulation, no more games." "We've told you the truth," Eli said quietly. "Have you?" "Because I've learned some very interesting things over the past few days." I gestured to the projector I'd set up. Things I think everyone should know. "Jonas, please," Vera said, stepping forward. "This doesn't have to get ugly." "It's already ugly, Vera. You made sure of that when you decided to destroy my life for revenge." The color drained from her face. Lauren and Trent looked confused, but Eli was staring at Vera with growing understanding. "That's right," I continued. "Vera here orchestrated this whole thing. The affair, the manipulation, all of it. She's been pulling the strings from the beginning, and you've all been dancing to her tune." I hit play on the projector. The first image that appeared on the mansion's crumbling wall was a newspaper clipping from 12 years ago. "Lawyer disbarred in embezzlement scandal." "Vera Hutchins," I read aloud, "was found guilty of stealing over $200,000 from client accounts at Henderson and Associates. She was reported to authorities by Jonas Miller, whose wife's divorce settlement she had been skimming from." Lauren turned to stare at her best friend. "Vera, is this true?" "It was a long time ago," Vera said weakly. "Not long enough," I said, clicking to the next slide. "Because Vera never forgot. She never forgave. And when she met Lauren, she saw an opportunity for revenge." The next series of images showed text messages I'd recovered from Vera's phone, messages where she encouraged Lauren to notice Eli's maturity, his attractiveness, his need for a mother figure. Messages where she suggested that Lauren deserved better than a simple mechanic like me. "You manipulated me," Lauren whispered, her voice breaking. "I opened your eyes," Vera shot back. "I showed you what you could have instead of settling for a man who loved you," I finished. "A man who would have done anything for you." I clicked to the next slide. Photos of Trent and Vera together, clearly plotting, clearly conspiring. Trent was part of it too. Vera's been feeding him information, helping him plan his approach. "You weren't falling in love, Lauren. You were being hunted." Trent started to protest, but I cut him off. "Save it. I have recordings of your phone calls with Vera. I have bank records showing she's been paying you to seduce my wife. I have everything." The room erupted in accusations and denials, voices echoing off the mansion's walls like the ghosts of past betrayals. But I wasn't done yet. "The best part," I said, raising my voice above the chaos, "is that none of this had to happen. Lauren, if you'd been unhappy, we could have talked. We could have worked it out, or ended things cleanly. Eli, if you'd been struggling with feelings for Lauren, you could have come to me. I would have gotten you help, gotten you away from the situation." I looked at each of them in turn. "But you chose betrayal instead. You chose lies and manipulation and cruelty. You chose to try to destroy me rather than face your own problems honestly." "So what now?" Trent demanded. "What do you want from us?" "I want you to face the consequences of your choices," I said. "All of you." I pulled out my phone and showed them the screen. It was open to Facebook Live, and the viewer count was climbing rapidly. "Smile," I said. "You're on camera." The feed was broadcasting to every social media account I could access, every community group and local news outlet that would take it. Half the town was watching as I laid out the evidence of their betrayal, their manipulation, their lies. Lauren lunged for my phone, but I stepped back. "Too late," I said. "It's already out there. Everyone knows now. Your friends, your neighbors, your colleagues. Everyone knows what you really are." Vera was crying, her carefully constructed life crumbling around her. Trent was frantically trying to call someone, probably a lawyer. Eli was just sitting on the floor, his head in his hands. But I wasn't done yet. "There's one more thing," I said, pulling out a manila envelope. Divorce papers. Already filed. Lauren, you'll get nothing from me except what the law requires, which isn't much since adultery is still grounds for fault-based divorce in this state. I threw the envelope at her feet. Vera, your new employer fired you an hour ago. Turns out they don't like hiring embezzlers. Trent, the state bar is investigating you for conspiracy and fraud. You'll be lucky if you don't end up in jail. I looked at Eli last, my son who had betrayed me in the worst possible way. And you, I said quietly, you're not my son anymore. Don't come to my house. Don't call me. Don't contact me ever again. As far as I'm concerned, you died the day you decided to betray me. The silence that followed was deafening. Then I smiled, the cold, satisfied smile of a man who had finally gotten his revenge. You wanted a villain, I said, echoing my words from days earlier. Congratulations. You created one, and he just destroyed all of you. I walked out of that mansion and never looked back, leaving them to face the consequences of their choices in the ruins of their own making. 6 months later, I was standing behind the microphone at Millbrook's annual Founders' Day celebration, looking out at a crowd of faces that had once looked at me with pity and now watched me with something approaching respect, or maybe fear. It was hard to tell the difference sometimes. The town square was packed with families enjoying the late summer evening, kids running around with cotton candy, couples holding hands, everyone pretending that Millbrook was still the kind of place where bad things didn't happen to good people. But they all knew better now. They'd all seen the footage from the mansion. They'd all watched their neighbors' lives implode in real time, broadcast live for their entertainment. And they'd all learned that sometimes the quiet guy who fixes your car is the most dangerous man in the room. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my voice carrying easily across the square thanks to the sound system I'd helped set up that afternoon. I want to talk to you about second chances. I could see some familiar faces in the crowd. Marty was there, grinning with pride at his old fighter. Murphy from the electronics store gave me a thumbs up. Mrs. Dunning from next door was nodding approvingly. She'd never liked Lauren anyway. 6 months ago, I thought my life was over, I continued. I thought I'd lost everything that mattered to me. My wife, my son, my faith in people. I thought I was the victim of circumstances beyond my control. A murmur went through the crowd. Everyone knew the story by now, had heard the details whispered in grocery store aisles and debated in coffee shops. But I learned something important during those dark days. I learned that we're not victims unless we choose to be. We're not powerless unless we give our power away. And we're not finished unless we decide to quit. I paused, letting my eyes sweep across the crowd, looking for the faces I knew wouldn't be there. Lauren had left town 2 weeks after the mansion incident, driven out by the shame and the gossip and the complete destruction of her reputation. Last I heard, she was working as a paralegal in some small town 3 states away, using her maiden name and hoping no one would connect her to the scandal. Vera had it worse. The criminal charges had stuck, and she'd spent 4 months in county jail before being released on probation. She was working at a fast food restaurant now, trying to pay back the restitution she owed and keep her head down. Her fancy condo was gone, her BMW repossessed, her life reduced to the bare minimum of survival. Trent had avoided jail time, but just barely. His law license was suspended, his trust fund frozen pending multiple civil suits, his pretty boy face marked by the stress and humiliation of very public failure. He'd moved back in with his parents, a 30-year-old man reduced to asking for an allowance. And Eli was the one that hurt the most. My son, former son, had tried to contact me several times over the past 6 months. Letters, phone calls, even showing up at my shop once before I had him escorted off the property. He was in therapy now, trying to understand how he'd been manipulated, trying to find a way to live with what he'd done. But some betrayals can't be forgiven. Some wounds don't heal. The truth is, I continued, my voice growing stronger, sometimes the worst thing that can happen to you turns out to be the best thing. Sometimes losing everything you thought you wanted helps you find everything you actually need. It was true. My repair shop was busier than ever, thanks partly to sympathy customers, but mostly because people had gained a new respect for my capabilities. When word got around that mild-mannered Jonas Miller had systematically destroyed 4 people who'd wronged him without breaking a single law, folks started thinking maybe he was the kind of man they wanted on their side. I'd also started coaching at Marty's gym, teaching kids how to channel their anger into something productive. There was something satisfying about passing on the lessons I'd learned, helping the next generation understand that strength wasn't about how hard you could hit, it was about how smart you could fight. I want to leave you with this thought, I said, building to my conclusion. In this life, you get to choose who you want to be. You can be the victim, feeling sorry for yourself and waiting for someone else to fix your problems. You can be the bully, taking what you want and damn the consequences. Or you can be something else entirely. I smiled then, the same cold smile that had become my trademark over the past 6 months. You can be the storm that everyone else has to weather. You can be the force that reshapes the landscape around you. You can be the person who decides how the story ends. The crowd was dead silent now, hanging on every word. 6 months ago, 4 people thought they could destroy Jonas Miller. They thought I was weak, simple, easy to manipulate and discard. They thought wrong. I leaned into the microphone, my voice dropping to barely above a whisper, but still carrying to every corner of the square. They wanted a villain in their story, so I became one. And I became so good at it that I rewrote the whole damn story with myself as the hero. The applause started slowly, just a few people clapping, then building until the whole square was erupting in cheers. They were cheering for me, for the underdog who'd fought back, for the man who'd refused to go quietly into the night. But mostly they were cheering because I'd done what they all secretly wished they could do. I'd made the people who hurt me pay completely and publicly and without mercy. I stepped back from the microphone, waved to the crowd, and walked off the stage. Behind me, the applause continued, but I was already thinking about tomorrow, about the next chapter of my story. Because the truth was, I'd discovered something about myself over the past 6 months. I discovered that I was very, very good at being the villain. And in a world full of people who thought they could take whatever they wanted from whoever they wanted, maybe the world needed more villains like me. I climbed into my truck, the same old pickup I'd been working on that night 6 months ago when I first heard Lauren's voice through the heating vent, and drove home to my empty house that no longer felt like a prison. It felt like a fortress. And I was the king of my own castle, the master of my own fate, the author of my own story. They'd wanted a villain. They got one. And he lived happily ever after.